Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Joint Organizational Governance Committee at Board of Retirement and Board of Investments. Today is Thursday, November 4th, and the time is 10 a.m. We will go ahead and pass this over to staff for a brief introduction.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe. This meeting is being conducted as a virtual meeting, so I will do a roll call of the trustees to confirm attendance. Mr. Kelly?
Present.
Ms. Gray?
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Bernstein?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Knox?
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Robbins? Mr. Santos? Ms. Greenwood? Mr. Kehoe?
Present.
Thank you. I don't think I'll come back to that. Sorry. And then I'm going to check on the BOI members. Ms. Sanchez, Mr. Jones, Mr. Green, the Board of Retirement members, Mr. Harris, Mr. Pryor, Ms. Zapata, Mr. Moore, Mr. Oakham. Staff participating in the meeting include the following: CEO Santos Cramen, CIO John Grable, Chief Counsel Stephen Rice, Deputy CEO Luis Lugo, AEOs JJ Popovich and Laura Guglielmo. We also have division managers and the budget team available on this call for any questions. Trustees, please use the Zoom chat option to be placed in the queue. At this time, we ask all meeting participants to mute their mics until you're ready to speak. And now we may proceed with the agenda.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Just confirming we got a quorum of the JOGC.
We do. Let me check for the BO. I only one, two. Yeah, we do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We will move on to our next item, which is the approval of the minutes of September 17th, 2021. I'll need a motion.
It's Keith, I'll move.
Second.
Moved by Knox, seconded by Bernstein. Let's please do a roll call vote.
Okay, Mr. Kelly?
You're muted.
Mr. Chair, there's an error in the minutes, I believe. I sent it to Mr.
Correct. You did submit errors. Did we get the corrected minutes out, Linda?
Mr. Kelly, what were the, well, I'm sorry, what was the error in the minutes?
I can't remember.
I
I
believe,
sent it to Mr. Kryman.
yeah, I believe you mentioned that it was the adjournment time.
It was 8:30. We checked the video.
We double checked it.
Oh, it wasn't the adjournment time. There was a word that was either misspelled or there was a typo in the word.
It was
W. So when we approve the minutes for LACERA.com, we'll go ahead and make sure that it's a lowercase w for the last.
Okay, so can you tell the committee what the error is?
Yes, at the last page of the JOGC minutes, it's supposed to say that the meeting was adjourned at 8:30 with a lowercase w instead of a capital W.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Knox, Mr. Bernstein, are you in agreement with the revisions?
Absolutely.
Not
Okay.
sure. I got to think about it. Can we discuss for a little bit? Okay, yes.
I'll take that as
Names can
yes.
break my bones, but names will never hurt me.
Perfect. Then let's go ahead and vote on the revised.
okay. I just
Linda?
want to, Miss Greenwood just joined the meeting. I just want to get her time. Okay, Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Miss Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Bernstein,
Yes.
okay, Mr. Knox.
Yes, with an uppercase Y.
I just want to see if Mr. Robbins has joined yet. I don't see him. Mr. Santos? Not in. Miss Greenwood?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Kehoe? Okay, the motion passes.
Perfect. That brings us to public comment. Have we received any requests from the public to speak?
We have not received any requests from the public to speak.
Got that, and no written requests as well. So
Correct.
we'll move on to our consent item A, which is a memo dated October 25th, 2021. I had no request to pull it, so if I can get a motion for the consent items.
I'll move consent.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, and moved and seconded. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Okay, Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Bernstein,
Aye.
thank you, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Ms. Greenwood.
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Kehoe.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to our non-consent item, which is our presentation on our mid-year budget. And I will turn this over to staff.
Yes,
Good morning,
hi.
trustees. I am Laura Guglielmo, the Assistant Executive Officer responsible for administration. Before you today is our proposed fiscal year 21-22 mid-year budget adjustment for LACERA's administrative budget. When the fiscal year 21-22 budget was adopted by the boards last spring, there was much uncertainty surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. We had indicated at that time that we would evaluate our needs at the mid-year and come back with any necessary adjustments. The budget team, in collaboration with management, assessed our needs and our expenditures. I'm pleased to say that no additional funding is required at this time. That being said, adjustments between accounts is required. As part of our review, we identified several projects and needs that were not anticipated last spring or that we expected to be completed and funded last fiscal year. We also identified salary savings to offset these unanticipated increases in our expense accounts. This approach, which looks to address current year needs by reallocating current year resources to the fullest extent possible, reflects a movement toward best practices in public sector budgeting that the executive team and I hope to bring to LACERA. When we bring the fiscal year 22-23 budget to you in the coming months, we hope to incorporate some additional best practices consistent with management's fiduciary responsibilities to the fund and to our members. So overall, staff identified a net need of an additional $1.2 million in services and supplies. This increase reflects an increase of 4.6% of our overall service and supply budget. This increase falls into four major categories: insurance, COVID-19 testing, legal fees and services, and information technology projects. We believe these expenses can be completely offset from projected savings in salaries and benefits based on how our actual hiring and onboarding has proceeded. The Human Resources Division has made significant progress, promulgating 10 new exams since May, but very few of the new employees have actually been onboarded to date. We do anticipate, however, that in the next few months, we will onboard a new class of retirement benefits specialists and onboard many additional positions, which are currently in process. This will allow us to reduce our vacancy rate from the current 22% to 16% or better by June 30th. Without objection, I will briefly walk through the adjustments proposed, and staff from the impacted divisions are here today should you have any detailed questions. So, Mr. Chair, would you like me to proceed, or would you prefer to just ask questions?
I think since we have a light agenda today, it'd be great to hear a breakdown from the various sections, and then questions can come up as you proceed.
Perfect. I'll proceed then. So I'll begin with insurance. As you are aware, when this item came before you last month, the cost of obtaining cyber liability insurance was $315,000 more than budgeted. The Administrative Services Division was able to find additional savings in other insurance line items, such as fiduciary, earthquake, and employment practice liability insurance, which allowed us to partially offset that increase in cyber liability premiums. So the net shortfall was $202,600. Next, at the time the budget was developed, we were not aware of the need to provide the weekly COVID-19 testing for unvaccinated staff members and trustees. We anticipate that the testing will begin in December and cost not more than $150,000 for the remainder of the fiscal year, which includes setup costs. I do want to point out, though, that should testing continue next fiscal year, we anticipate the full year cost to be approximately $225,000 a year. Next, I'd like to talk about the adjustment to the legal fees and services. We're requesting $655,000 based on current and anticipated rates of expenditures for the 2 to 3 open cases. I'm not really going to get into those, what those are at this time, but we're happy to answer questions about that. And then lastly, there's several adjustments are needed within the information technology budget for a net increase of $212,000. There are a lot of changes within this IT budget, but that net increase is really only $212,000. So like insurance, systems carefully reviewed all of the projects budgeted for the current fiscal year and considered what may no longer be needed, as well as what may practically be delayed until next fiscal year in order to address our most urgent needs. This included projects where we anticipated getting completed and billed last year, but were not able to do by the end of the year. So additions include the following: $90,000 for Amazon Web Hosting Services, which is now being charged by LA County's Information Systems Department that had not previously been charged, and we did not anticipate that as part of the budget.
On that, have we looked at doing some of that stuff on our own, and what the cost savings would be if we separate ourselves from the ISD side?
I'm going to refer that to either Sumi or Kathy from our systems division.
Sure. Thank you, Laura. I'll take that. So we do anticipate moving away from Amazon Web Services, and it was a project that was budgeted for this current fiscal year, but we don't anticipate getting started on it until next fiscal year. So we're going to continue with Amazon Web Services until that point, and that's why it's showing up in the budget. We had planned on making a switch to address some key requirements that we're looking for, but as Laura pointed out, we won't be able to practically get through the RFP process and procurement until next fiscal year.
Got it. So that's the long-term plan. Thank you.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kathy. Next, we are requesting $300,000 for the Centura document processing devices. These were devices that we actually received after the close, that were planned and budgeted for last fiscal year, that we received after the close of the fiscal year. And because of our accounting being done on a cash basis instead of an accrual basis, the funds were budgeted but weren't able to be spent last fiscal year. Next, $262,000 in other cloud migration projects that were budgeted and started last fiscal year, but not billed in time. These include $80,000 for our Intranet 2.0 or new Intranet project, $82,000 for our Power BI implementation, and $100,000 for our knowledge base replacement projects. And this again is just a timing issue, a little bit of delay from last year that gets pushed into the current year. This next one is $180,000 for our Microsoft tenant migration. We accelerated this project this fiscal year by utilizing outside resources. This saved about 12 months time and other hosting costs, which we're going to talk about in a minute, all while improving our end user experience. So we think that this was a very good adjustment made both from a practical and service standpoint. Then the last additional cost is $50,000 for docking stations. This allows our staff to more easily transition between home and office in our new proposed hybrid work environment, where staff will be working, a lot of staff will be working both in the office and at home at any given time. So
can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
On that note, docking stations, I know on the county side, there's a big push to no longer order desktops, just order laptops. You know, there's obviously a delay in receiving laptops right now because of the chip shortage and such, but how does a switch from desktops to laptops impact the budget? Are employees being issued laptops now that they can use at home? And then that's their singular only computer that they'll take back and forth everywhere? is that going to reflect savings in the near long term? Is that going to be more expensive? Is that factored in?
So I'm actually the first employee to get a docking station and laptop only. I have no desktop, but in terms of the overall cost impact, I'm going to defer to Kathy or Sumi to talk about.
Sure, I can talk a little bit about that. Thanks, Laura. So as we transition to a hybrid work environment, many of the staff already have laptops. We have over 200 that we purchased during COVID. And so as those staff return to work, they'll be using a docking station, and we will repurpose the workstations. So, and there will be a savings in the long run, because during COVID, we actually had two pieces of hardware for everyone. We had their workstation in the office, and we also sent them home with a laptop. So there will be some savings. Long term, it's not factored into this fiscal year, but I think you'll see it next fiscal year. And then Sumi, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Sure thing, yes. Thank you, Kathy. Good morning, Chair Keogh and trustees. In terms of cost savings, that actually will be realized sooner rather than later, because a lot of the workstations we have in the office are up for refresh. So rather than having to do that refresh and plan for it next fiscal year, we're basically piggybacking off the fact that these laptops are more or less a year old. So.
And then anything beyond that, in terms of additional docking stations, so people have them at home and at work, or any other, I know we're supposed to do an assessment of an employee's home workstation just to make sure that they're comfortable and we're avoiding repetitive motion things and posture-based issues. Any costs associated with things like that?
So part of the budget request for the 50,000 does include additional docking stations should we need to deploy for staff at home as well. So we'll go through with each division manager and work with their specific staff that have those needs. So
thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
There any other questions before I talk about some of the savings that we've identified?
I have a whole bunch of questions, but I'm going to wait until the end.
Okay. All right, I'll continue. We're almost done. So those costs were offset by a series of savings also in the systems division. So Kathy did a great job of going through her budget and identifying what she's not, the staff isn't going to have the capacity to handle this year, or that just realistically can be delayed for various reasons and can lower the cost for the current year. So one of the things that she's determined should be delayed is replacing the telephone system and equipment until next fiscal year. That's a cost or savings in the current year of $295,000. That delay is primarily because of, I think it has to do with the COVID implementation, that it's not as urgent to replace that with everybody working from home and all of our other priorities in terms of really making sure people are efficient. Next is $75,000 in LAN hardware maintenance that is just not going to be needed. Third is $100,000 savings in our UPS or uninterruptible power supply equipment maintenance. Because we've been able to accelerate the retirement of some of our old on-site equipment, we were able to reduce the number of these replacement devices needed for that savings. So it's just straight savings. We're not going to need that.
So
next is
question on that one.
Sure.
So are we talking about battery backups at individual workstations, or are we talking about a full server room system?
I'll answer that, Laura, if it's okay. So, we recently migrated our mainframe to a hosted solution, and that data center is no longer requiring the UPS. And that was our largest data center.
Okay, so and we're comfortable with what we have on site for if we reduce our UPS size, that we have coverage and that we can work in an emergency, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I know we have this remote system that in place now that we've been doing for the last year, but when people are back on site, we still have the ability to function in the event of a power outage.
We do.
Okay.
And that's a great point, because it gets to this next item. Our hot site disaster recovery site, we're going to save $100,000 this year, because when we migrated our mainframe to Phoenix, we were able to improve our recovery time, and we were also able to eliminate this expense. So it was sort of a little bit of an older approach to disaster recovery. And by making the adjustments we made this year and accelerating that approach, we're able to save a significant amount of money and a lot of time in our backups, and without compromising one iota our ability to recover that critical data.
Perfect.
So that's great.
Can I have Bob, if say Bob's on, can you comment, or we on concurrence on this from the CISO side of the world?
I can comment. We have looked at both of the data centers and our backup and recovery and our disaster recovery, and with our cloud migration, we're very comfortable with no loss of data or no loss of connectivity in the event of an issue.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Great. And then next is, again, really, because we were the mainframe software and licensing, because we moved up our migration, we have licensing savings of $100,000 in the current year. So that concludes my report, but happy to take your questions. And we've got staff who are definitely the subject matter experts in their respective areas. So please, whatever questions you have, we're happy to take them on.
Sounds good. So please use the chat option to place yourself in the queue. I have Mr. Kelly is going to be up first with questions.
Thank you very much, and thank you to staff for their efforts here. Do we have a written budget adjustment policy?
We don't. I think well, one of the things that Mr. Kryman and I have been talking about, and Mr. Lugo and I have been talking about in terms of how we move forward with our budget. When we propose our budget for next fiscal year, I think that we do need to have some discussions and make some adjustments on how we really look at and manage our budget. So a budget is a financial plan that should be, when it's developed, you want it to reflect your strategic priorities, but also your operational work plan. And it needs to, you need to basically fund what you say you want to do, and it's a reflection of values in that respect. But it's also a control mechanism. Are you getting the work done that you've promised and planned to do for that year? And how are you managing that? And it seems, as an outsider, and I'm very new to the organization, as you know, but it seems like that the process at LACERA has been very oriented on the initial budget development, but not so much that ongoing management of the plan. And that's something that we hope to change. It's an improvement that we think is reasonable and appropriate, and that will allow us to. We'll be, as part of the budget, also be developing internally an expected expenditure plan, so that we have an idea of how the funds are going to be needed across the year, so that when we're monitoring it monthly and quarterly and reporting back to you to share where we are, we have a high level of confidence that we're on plan or we're off plan, and what adjustments might be needed. But in the past, I think when there was an adjustment needed, it was, well, let's just grab additional money from the reserve that's within the total funds authority. And in my view, that's not really appropriate.
I agree.
First and foremost, you want to be able to live within your means.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. I would encourage you to develop a written budget adjustment policy, and in that policy to include some delegation by dollar amount to the CEO. It doesn't make sense to me that I think right now all dollar thresholds or all actions are coming before the board. I don't know if that's necessary. So I think it's an important document to have, and I would encourage you to present that as part of the next budget. I am bothered by the significant costs with testing, for COVID testing for those who are seeking exemptions. And so Santos, you're reporting in your monthly reports the absolute number of staff who are seeking exemptions, and then those you've approved and the relative percentage of total staff?
That's correct.
So what is the relative percentage of total staff who are seeking exemptions?
Well, off the top of my head, I believe that we have a total of 390 employees. I believe there are 36 individuals that have applied for either a medical or religious exemption. So the testing would be for those particular individuals.
So you've granted all the requests?
Yes.
Okay.
There's one that's still being evaluated, but yes, I have granted all of the medical requests and the religious exemption requests. Yes.
Okay, and the cost of 225 is for those 37?
Correct.
So,
full year?
Well, Laura can.
Yeah, it's assuming weekly testing. I think it's weekly testing, full year for them, and we also included additional some additional. It's padded a little bit to reflect. I don't know whether the trustees are going to want to be tested. I don't know as new employees come in.
I understand. Okay. So on page 3 of the memo, which is page 12 of 97, you talk about Amazon Web Services hosting. And you say, I would encourage you in the future to make the narrative consistent. And by that, I mean, at some points you told me what the budget was and what the increase was. And at some points you just told me what the increase was. So I don't know if it's a 50% increase or a 10% increase. So in the future, if we could standardize the presentation of the numbers, that would be helpful, at least to me. Amazon Web Services hosting, you say, recently received billing indicates that an additional $90,000 is required. This made no sense to me whatsoever, because I don't know how we could commit to buy something if we didn't know what the total bill was. So here you're telling me you bought something for $1 million and then you got the bill and it's $1,090,000. Why didn't you send the bill back and say, no, I'm not paying this $90,000 because I only committed to pay $1 million. That was our bill of sale. I'm not getting how you have incremental budgetary impact due to cost variances that are fixed. So my question is, I don't understand that.
I think
I'm gonna pass it.
Kathy might be able to answer the.
Sure. So for the Amazon web hosting, that is something that we transitioned to during COVID, and it was a solution that came together very quickly, and the county offered the billing through them so that we could use Amazon Web Services. And so I think, obviously, if we went through a normal procurement process without COVID, we would do it methodically and have some negotiating capabilities. But we were grateful for the service because our call center was dead in the water, and it was an option to get us up and running in a very short amount of time.
So go ahead, JJ.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and because I think I can understand where the increase is. This increase is due to volume, is it not, Kathy?
Yes.
Yeah. So AWS is the call center solution, and there's an estimated volume that we expected, but volume is out of our control. Charges are based just like telephone bills. They're all based on volume, and so as the volume goes up, and our call volume has gone up, our costs unfortunately are going to go up. As we have more experience, and if we can begin to predict what that call volume may look like, then that may we may be able to better forecast, but we really can't. We really couldn't predict the increase of in calls that we've seen.
I understand, JJ, and thank you for that. That what you just said is very different than this sentence says. And I had a question on, we talked about Microsoft migration. So Santos, it dawned on me reading through this that, the world is burning basically. And a lot of companies are viewing ESG through various prisms. I think LACERA Investment Office has done a great job in terms of the relationships it has with investment managers and affiliates. But there's a line item in here to buy a new car, I think. Are you buying electric cars? In other words, is there a sustainability prism through which you view this budget? If there's not, I think there probably should be on an ongoing basis, and that those views be packaged as sustainability efforts. Because I didn't see that anywhere in here in terms of the efforts that you are taking or plan to take or will need to take if you know the regulatory framework changes. From a sustainability perspective. And I think that's really important from the perspective of the budget because it is the spending plan. So I would encourage you, as you develop next year's budget, to view it specifically through a sustainability prism and begin to think about how to report on that in aggregate, because I think that's an important effort we should be focused on. I think those were my questions. Hold on, I have one more. No, those are my questions. Thank you very much.
And for the record, Trustee Kelly, the procurement policy regarding cars does require that there are certain requirements that we are required to have. They have to be manufactured in California. They have to have minimum either hybrid or EV fuel sustainability, but I understood your bigger issue to be one more of a strategic planning viewpoint about what is the value using your budget to reflect your values as an organization. And I think that as we get into our strategic planning in the coming months, that's a great opportunity to talk about what does this board view as some of those bigger overarching objectives that we can then incorporate into the budget.
I would agree. Thank you very much for
Mr.
that.
Keller, was that more of the strategic planning side or was that more of the budgeting side so that we could
I think
capture?
both. I think it's both, Mr. Keogh. I think it definitely has to be on the strategy side, but you know, LACERA is a firm with 400 people and a lot of members, and I think it has a responsibility also to educate its membership about its sustainability practices. But I think it's both. I think it absolutely is imperative to include on the strategic planning side as well.
Thank you. Okay, we'll open it up to additional trustees. I see nobody in the queue at this point. Does anybody have any last questions?
Mr. Keogh, I am in the queue.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bernstein. Yep.
So I'd rather hold off on the strategic conversation until the strategic planning, although I think the comments are interesting and on point. I want to, first of all, I want to ask, is this for information only, or does it require us to actually, since we're not changing the budget amount, do we need to vote to approve the reallocations, or is that already implied within the authority of staff?
I think that's a good point. I think technically, it doesn't really require a vote. However, because certain aspects of the budget request here would increase the contract amount beyond what the CEO has authority for, staff is requesting that you approve these changes so that there's no question that when we actually expend more of the
Can we get
contracts
that, can we get that clarified? If we're going beyond Santos's statutory authority, I'm happy to move it. I'm a pretty firm believer that I don't want us to be approving what our CEO already has the right to do. So can we just clarify that point? If it is going beyond his authority, I'd like to move it. But if it's within his discretion, I don't want to act like we have to approve our CEO's discretion.
There are specific areas where it's beyond his discretion. For example, in the legal services, his authority is $150,000. But like the COVID testing would be within his authority, as an example. So that's why we brought this and presented it in a way requesting your approval. Had none of the had the overall authority been within his authority, we would have provided it as informational.
And since the mid-budgeting process is for me still a little bit new, are we approving it, or are we making a recommendation to the respective boards that they approve it?
We can only make a recommendation, so that
Okay.
we would need a motion to recommend approval to both Board of Retirement and Board of Investments.
I was there, Chair Kehoe.
I'll move that. I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I
haven't made my comment yet.
No, I was going to say, so do you have additional? So Mr. Bernstein, you still have the floor.
Okay. I think this is great. I think this is a good part of the process. Laura, thank you it's nice to have you presenting. You are new to this. I think we have acknowledged in the last year or two that our historical budget process has had some weaknesses, and I appreciate that staff is working to strengthen and improve the process. There's one thing that I observed, and it's sort of just a question, I think, for staff to ponder. And it's that some of that we budget annually, but some of the changes that are being proposed here involve moving things from salary to more fixed item expenditures. And I can't help but observe that in our system, when we make salary changes, there are multi-year impacts because we don't take on salary obligations annually. We're committed to our employees for a long time. And I just want to encourage staff to think about how to best present that aspect of the budget, not today, but as we move forward, both the annual implications of our budgeting decisions, but the long-term ramifications, because it to me is not as simple as simply moving a dollar from one bucket to another when one is a very fixed expenditure and one, as I pointed out, has a ripple effect. It's good work today. It's not any objection today. I just think as we continue to strengthen the process, I'd like to be looking at the budget both for its immediate impact and for its multi-year impact.
Yeah, I agree. As part of the planning, like you really should have a bigger picture, longer range financial plan that you understand the impact of your decisions, particularly staffing costs have a long-term.
Great, but thank you for the work, and I'm happy to support this.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Mr. Santos.
Can you hear me? I was having problems with connectivity before.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm in support of the proposed revised budget. But I want to add to Mr. Kelly's point regarding sustainability. One issue that actually was brought to my attention before COVID, and I have not had the chance to raise it, but I think this is probably an appropriate place. The issue was that there was a member who wanted to attend one of the board meetings, and he discovered that there's no gender neutral bathrooms up in the 8th floor. This particular individual sex change operation and didn't feel comfortable using the bathrooms that we have there. So I think that's something that we should think about in the future. Any place you go right now, just about there's always a gender neutral bathroom that I think is important that we need to upgrade. Other than that, I'm in support of the proposed budget. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, I see no additional requests to speak, and we have a motion on the table to recommend approval to both boards. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Okay, Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bernstein?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins?
Aye.
Mr. Santos?
Yes.
Ms. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. That brings us to items for staff review. I believe that we asked staff to look into the sustainability elements of the budgeting process. So I'll let staff take that and bring it back to whatever they feel is appropriate boards or venues for that. I believe that's for the upcoming ad hoc committee.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I had also asked that staff consider developing a written budget adjustment policy.
Correct. Yep, I forgot about that one. Anything else, Linda?
That would be it. That would be it.
Perfect. Okay, so that will move us to good of the order. Linda, I'll go ahead and have you do the roundtable.
You got it. Mr. Kelly?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gray?
Nothing, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Bernstein?
A well-run meeting, Chair Kehoe.
Yep.
Mr. Knox?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Robbins?
Nothing.
Mr. Santos?
Yes, thank you. Just shout out to the staff. Great presentation. Appreciate you answer to the questions by my colleagues. Other than that, have a beautiful afternoon.
Ms. Greenwood?
I've got nothing other than let me second have a lovely afternoon.
Ms. Sanchez?
I'm just a fly on the wall, so.
Mr. Jones?
No, not at all. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Green's not here. Mr. Harris? I don't see him. Mr. Pryor, Ms. Zapanta, Mr. Moore, Mr. Oakham, Mr. Kramer?
Just wanted to say thank you to Laura and her staff for putting the budget together. And we're looking forward to moving in the direction of identifying best budget practices moving forward and making sure that we document a plan consistent with Trustee Kelly's recommendations. And so thank you all, and everybody enjoy their Thursday and their weekend.
Louis?
Good morning, everyone. Similarly, I also like to thank Laura, especially the budget team. Kaylin and Kevin did a lot of work in a short amount of time to put the information together. And again, Laura, thank you for jumping right in. I know you've been on board for a month, but you jumped right in, and looking forward, and as well as the trustees' feedback, especially regarding the budget adjustment policy. That's something that we've also acknowledged as an important tool for us to move forward on. So have a great rest of your day, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you. JJ?
Nothing except have a great day, and thank you for your support.
Laura?
Thank you. Yeah, I do want to just say a special thanks to Kaylin and Kevin, who really put so much effort and put the budget together and do every year, and really spend a lot of time and are very thorough and prompt about it, which I really appreciated. And also to the division managers that looked at their needs and really worked to identify savings within their existing resources. So that's, admin services and systems especially did that. So I want to just thank the teams who did that.
John Grable?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, Stephen Rice?
Good morning, nothing.
Okay, and Mr. Kehoe?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, heartfelt thank you to staff on this. And I am very much looking forward to our future budgeting process. I know that we have a lot of changes that are going to be coming up that are going to be great for all of us. So appreciate all the effort. And thank you to all the trustees for jumping in here on a Thursday, and have a great rest of the day. I will need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved. Thank you all.
Have a good one, everyone.